Hello, everyone's Forest Focus. Nottingham Forest will be looking for their third straight win in the Premier League when they take on West Ham United at the City Ground on Saturday. 5 points and 6 places separate the teams currently, as I'm joined by Mark Carlaw from the West Ham way to give us the Hammers' point of view this week. Mark, good to have you back with us. You kindly came on to discuss stadium moves when we were potentially leaving the City Ground, but here's football this time. How are you doing today?
Very good, thank you. Not too bad considering. No, a pleasure to be on again. Of course, always nice to speak to you, Matt. So yeah, looking forward to it.
You say all things considering. I suppose is that related to West Ham's season? It feels like they're underperforming a little bit, or are they in a bit of a false position?
It's a tricky one because I'm sure you'll relate to this as well. Nottingham Forest. I think it was you. This is your third season Premier League now,
Yes.
isn't it?
Yes.
So, obviously, when you first got promoted, you had that huge transition and an overhaul of the squad. I can't remember the amount of players it was now, but it was like 15 or 14.
Oh, it was more than that, yeah. 22, yeah.
Right, there you go. I remember it took a long time, and I remember thinking that season, I think you looked quite destined to go down at one point. I'm thinking, I just don't think this team are going to settle. And obviously, thankfully, you didn't. You survived and did well. But in the end, well, you certainly seem to be doing well this season, which is great to see, by the way. I think we're not to that extreme, but we've had 9 new signings come into the club. And when we say 9 new signings as well, you're sort of talking, 6 or 7 you would expect to be first team, in the starting 11. So it's a considerable amount of change. Plus, of course, the manager, David Moyes, obviously leaving. Now we've got Lopetegui in. So, yes, it's been a bit of a disappointing start. And yes, I can understand frustrations. I've certainly got a bit of a frustration, in terms of the seasons to date. But at the same time, I'm quite mindful you need to give things a little bit of time. You can't. I'm certainly not panicking. I'm not sitting there going, "Oh my god, this is a disaster." But it's not been the kind of start we were hoping for. But you know what football's like. It's we want results. We want them straight away. And if we don't really allow for time, especially in the Premier League, you don't have that luxury. You can't say, "Well, give me a year. I'll let things settle down." You just haven't got it. You've got to hit the ground running. So it's not been the best of starts for us, but I don't think it's a disaster either. If that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, it does, definitely. I mean, I've only seen, we were saying before we started recording, I've only seen 2 West Ham games, and I'm not sure they're entirely indicative. A home performance against Chelsea where you lost 3-0, and away at Tottenham where you lost 4-1 and really looked pretty bad in that game. Are they indicative of performances, or are they blips in the kind of fixtures that we've seen so far?
They would be the worst 2 performances, so that probably paints a bit of a picture that's probably not quite accurate of where we actually are. The problem West Ham have got at the moment is we've got no consistency. Some games we look very good defensively and we struggle offensively. And then you think, okay, well, at least we've defended well today. You can probably build on that. And then the next game will be horrendous at the back and then quite attack-minded, and we look quite fluid going forward. So it's really difficult to sort of pinpoint where we are at the moment. It's certainly very hard for me to predict what West Ham's going to appear. When we've got this Forest game at the weekend, I personally think this is a very tough game for us. Very, very tough, especially with the form that Forest are in and started so well this season. But yeah, I'd say those 2 games are probably a little bit misleading. We have performed a lot better than that. And we have got some really good players, Matt. We really do. We've got some really special players within the squad that can make a big difference and can really be quite, game changers. But it's just we're still not quite a team yet. You can sense that some of the players are still not quite sure of their position, their role. We look quite nervous at times, and which I think. Again, I kind of get it. I do understand that. I think it's unreasonable to expect, a whole new group of players to come together and click very quickly and to understand each other, understand their roles in the team. I can kind of understand why it would take time to settle. So that's where we are at the moment. We're just not very settled at the moment, and we're looking. And there is anxiety around. Definitely, I think there's also frustration. There's been calls for the manager to be replaced already, but that. For me, that's kind of just modern football. That if you took a look at Nuno, I think he's done great at Forest so far. He's looking like a decent appointment. But you know what it's like if you lost, say, 3 or 4 games on the spin. You'd imagine some fans would start going, right, he's not good enough. We need to make a change. It's just a natural sort of thing with football. So I'm trying not to get sort of swept up into any of that. I just feel like it's it's important we sort of keep a bit level-headed. However, we want to be in the European places this season. We want to be in that top sort of 8 teams. So we've got a bit of work to do now, and we can't keep dropping points week after week and then saying, well, it's sooner or later it's going to click because we're going to start running out of games. So the pressure is on a little bit for West Ham, but I'm certainly not panicking, if that makes sense.
I think you're right what you say about managers as well. Like thinking back to Nuno, we're seeing the value of a pre-season that he didn't have when he came in, and we didn't sign loads of players. And he probably did need to start the season well because we didn't finish last season that well in terms of results. Now you see it, and everyone's super happy with our manager. So what about your manager then in general in Lopetegui? Because he did well at Wolves and he looked a good appointment. But like you say, I see bits on social media of discontent around certainly the results, and it seems like a fan's not overly happy with the style of football as well, or not.
I think it's a strange one because he's not really an attacking style manager. We've appointed a manager actually pretty similar to David Moyes. If you look at how he's quite pragmatic and focuses more on trying to keep a solid defence and nicking results. So I feel a little bit for him because he's kind of been appointed, and then the club are kind of using this narrative. Oh, look at this exciting new manager and this exciting way of football we're going to play. So it's almost like he's having to go against his principles. I feel. I'm not sold on him at the moment, but that's only because I haven't got any evidence to be excited about with him at the moment. I will say I'm seeing some things I do like. The one things I do like about him, he uses his bench quite well. He sees the 5 substitutes as just as important as the starting 11, which West Ham, we're not used to that. We've had a few years of Moyes where actually the complete opposite of that. He rarely made changes, and when he did, it was always it was too late. A lot of the time, he'd sort of stand back and watch things unfold. That we'd all be going, right, this isn't working. You need to make a change, and he was very stubborn. Whereas Lopetegui is very opposite of that. In fact, I've seen him this season. He took off Rodriguez, who's a new signing for us, a midfielder. He took him off after half an hour. I think that was the Chelsea game you watched, actually. He did that. So he's not frightened to make changes. And he's also just changed our goalkeeper. He's dropped our number 1 goalkeeper, Fabianski's now come back in. Again, I don't think we'd have had that with David Moyes. He would have been very, very reluctant to do any kind of big changes. So I quite like that about him. However, what he is doing, Lopetegui, he's correcting his own mistakes. So we'd start a game all over the shop. He then identifies the problems, makes the substitutions, and we look a lot better. But really now I kind of want to move away from that and say, can we just start with the team that's going to go and win the game rather than finding the team that's going to be more suited for this opponent midway through it? Against Manchester United, we were lucky really because we could have been 3 or 4 down at half time because we were that poor in the first half. But then he made changes at half time, and we were a completely different team in the second half, and were by far the better team. So I'd hope he's going to start learning from this now and just start going like, this is my better team. And I get that, like we were saying, he's still early on. So to expect him to know his best 11 and his best players for each position at the moment is probably a little bit unreasonable, but I'd like to start seeing it a little bit more now. I want to start seeing a bit more of a settled side. So overall, I'm not thrilled with him. I'm not sitting there going, oh, I'm absolutely thrilled. But at the same time, there are some positives to pull out from what I've seen so far.
I remember seeing team sheets for Wolves when they play Forest and thinking, God, he's leaving some of his best players on the bench. But then he made very proactive subs that actually made the team better. So I can, understand what you're saying there. On the United game, it's interesting because I saw social media clips again. I didn't see the game, but Dalot missed a huge chance, and I think Fernandes missed one. Then you got a penalty, which a lot of people said wasn't a penalty. Do you kind of hope that's a catalyst for something to really get your season going now?
It's difficult because it wasn't one of those performances where you went, wow, we've arrived a little bit here. We played some really good football. It wasn't really like that. It was a little bit of a basketball game in the second half. It was entertaining. It was really entertaining. We played well. Don't get me wrong. In the second half, we played really. I was impressed with some of our play. I think it was more of a confidence booster rather than you didn't walk away feeling, wow, bring on Nottingham Forest. They're in for it now. I didn't get that feeling at all. It was more of a relief that we got the 3 points. But I'm hoping that it gives some of the players a bit of belief. Obviously, Manchester United, I know that they're obviously not Manchester United of old, but it's still Man United. It's a big team to play. They're a team that are obviously going to be challenging for the top 6 or whatever this season. So to beat them at home is a good result. But we've got to start building on this because we've had a couple of decent results already this season, but we've just flopped straight away after it. I mean, by the way, when I say a couple of results, I really do mean a couple, not many. But we've then, for instance, we beat Ipswich at home 4-1 and we comfortably beat them. And then we went to Tottenham and lost 4-1. So we've got real lack of consistency at the moment. So we really need to start showing we're going to build on things, and the club talk a good talk, and I'm hoping that we're going to see that against Nottingham Forest, where we actually go and look a bit more settled, and we're going to give Forest a game. But I'm under no illusions it's going to be a very tough game. In fact, Matt, out of the 3 games before the international break, and I'm including Manchester United in this was the toughest game by far. I would say Nottingham Forest away was the one I'd go. If anything, actually, I'm quite glad we got this win against Man United because it's taken the pressure off a little bit. We don't have to beat you. Do you know what I mean? I'm not looking at it going, this is a must win. I'm thinking if we can get a point, I'll be pretty happy with that.
Oh, that's good to hear. Good to hear. I didn't ask you this in advance, but are you able to do a predicted 11 off the top of your head? A rough one, not necessarily the one you
did probably. Yeah, I can pretty much give you. Do it now.
Yeah, if you're able to. Yeah.
Yeah, Fabianski will be in goal. Definitely, he was impressive overall against Man United, and he came in for Areola. We'll have. At right back, we'll have Wan-Bissaka, who's been outstanding. He was really good against Manchester United. Todibo will most likely be partnering Kilman at the back. Tadebo's very good. Them two have been very good, and Emerson. Our actual back 4 are pretty decent, actually. Have been and they're in pretty good form. So defensively, we're all right. The problem is we're playing, by the way, we play a high line under Lopetegui, which you can just sense that we're not quite used to it. So if you've got better pace in that front line, then you can cause us problems because if you can get in behind, that's where we struggle. Midfield will be Edson Alvarez and Rodriguez will be our midfield, I'm sure. Possibly Lucas Paqueta in the middle. I'm assuming it will be Paqueta it will be playing as a number 10 role. Jared Bowen on the right, Somerville on the left, I imagine, and Mikel Antonio up front. That's my guess, and I'll be surprised. Maybe 1 or 2 will be maybe wrong, but it's only, as I say, Lopetegui may drop a player, but knowing he's going to bring him on, he'll. I mean, that's how he will set up. But that'll probably be the starting 11.
Let me ask you about a couple of those then. I'll ask you about the tactically thing there. So you surprised me when you say he's playing a high line. That feels like he's fighting his instincts, like you said earlier. Is that how it feels when you watch the team a bit then?
A little bit. Yeah, it does feel. You can sense that defensively we look a little bit vulnerable. I mean, when you look at, Mavropanos won't start if Todibo's fit, which I believe he is, he will start. But Mavropanos looks very uncomfortable with that gap between the goalkeeper and the defensive line. That you can just sense that there's so much space there that we look a bit vulnerable. It feels like one of those things that once they've got to grips with it, we'll be okay. But that you could just sense that we look a little bit lost, and because they're worrying when they've got to come forward to challenge, it's almost like, well, if we go forward, there's just so much space behind me, and I'm just never going to get back. So, as you say, it does feel like it goes against the instincts of Lopetegui, and that's possibly why we are struggling a little bit, because it's all a little bit new and possibly even new for him to deal with. So that's something we're going to be dealing with. But however, I will say, against Nottingham Forest, I suspect we won't play such a high line. I imagine we will play more of a low block, actually. We did do it against Tottenham. And although that you said you watched that game, did you watch the whole game, that Tottenham game, Matt?
Yeah, because you were winning 1-0 and playing well, and then you had a nightmare 15 minutes.
Right. So I thought we were all right. At half time, I was pretty comfortable. I mean, that we would get a result. I thought, well, we can probably get something from this game. We just didn't deal with the half time changes. But I thought actually defensively we looked pretty solid. We were okay. We weren't in that much danger. I mean, Tottenham definitely were the better team. I'm not suggesting they weren't, but I at no point I wasn't worried. Do you know what I mean? I wasn't at half time thinking, God Almighty, we're getting battered here. We're lucky to get anything out of this game. I thought, well, we've been all right. We look quite solid. We just fell apart. We conceded 3 goals in 8 minutes, which tells the story of the game a little bit. It kind of misleads how we were playing. So I imagine we will play similar against Forest. I imagine we will play more defensive minded and try to play on the counter attack and nick the game, which is coincidentally that's a David Moyes style of playing. But that's what I imagine. I don't think we'll be playing a very high line against yourselves, to be honest. I think we'll probably try to snatch something from this game rather than go in there to go, right, we're going to dominate possession and try to take the game to Nottingham Forest. I don't think we will do that.
No, I think you'd be pretty silly to when we've got Elanga and Hudson-Odoi and, the pace to burn. So, yeah, that would be pretty odd. I'll ask Mark about a couple of other players shortly, but just before we do, a quick advert for the M&M gig that is straight after the West Ham game at the Trent Navigation. So we'll see you in 17 seconds. Straight after the game on Saturday, you can get a bit of dinner there as well if you want pizza or barbecue, obviously. So, yeah, do enjoy that one straight after the match, as I say. Just a couple of other players I wanted to ask you about. Paqueta's such a talented player. I was listening to, I can't remember what it was, one of the national podcasts, maybe Football Weekly or something, and they said that they thought Paqueta was maybe playing too deep. They weren't seeing the best of him, and obviously he's got quite a lot on his mind with betting charges, which he denies. What have you made of him this season?
Really poor. Like he really, in my opinion, shouldn't be playing in this fixture. I think he will. It was his best performance actually against Manchester United, I'll say, but we've not got nowhere near the Paqueta of old. Lucas Paqueta is one of those players, because he's just so talented. He can be a bit of a hothead and he can do a bit crazy things at times that can be quite frustrating. However, he's just got that ability to just carve open a defence or do something really special. He's just got, that magic that he's always ahead of the other players. Unfortunately, we're just not seeing that this season. As you say, with his betting stuff, I feel like it's just hanging over him, and that it's a different conversation. But I feel like that's not looking too good for him. So personally, I would leave him out. I'd rather us deal with it that he's not playing. I feel like we can manage without him, but I don't think that'll be the case. And as I will say, he did play okay against Manchester United. He did come off at half time, but he was on a yellow card. And to be honest with you, he looked like he was gunning for a red, really. He was on a yellow, but he was continually flying around. He was arguing with the ref. He was round with other players. And you're thinking, are you trying to get sent off? And maybe subconsciously he was, in a way, because he's probably thinking, I want to get away from this because I'm under so much pressure. I don't know. It's a difficult situation at the moment with him. But I don't think it's where his positioning is, to be honest. I think it's just the fact that he's suffering on his personal life, and it's probably leaking onto his performances on the pitch now, which is just really, really sad to see. But it is what it is, and it's something we're going to have to manage at the moment. But he's still a wonderful player on his day, but at the moment we've just not seen it at all this season.
Obviously, you've got a lot of quality in attack. And when we think about it, Jared Bowen's obviously, an elite England player. Kudus is the other one, and he's suspended for this one. How big a blow is that?
Yeah, it's a blow. I mean, he's a great player, and he causes teams no end of problems. Again, though, look, not the same scale as Paqueta, but he hasn't quite been at it this season yet. This has been, frustrating, this suspension, because it's come at a bad time. And he just scored as well against Tottenham, so he was hoping to build on that. Obviously, then got sent off. So really frustrating. But I feel like we can manage. I think Somerville, to be honest, has been probably one of our best players this season when called upon. He's been really, really impressive. And I feel like this is actually, although it's really frustrating to lose Kudus, because obviously of his ability, it might slightly be a blessing for us because we look a bit more balanced with having a natural winger, a left winger, I mean. Kudus isn't suited for the left-hand side, but unfortunately he's playing there because it's the only position we've got available for him, really. So he does come inside quite a lot, but Somerville's just a natural winger, and he's just scored his first goal for the club, so I think he's going to have his towel up for this game. Bowen, as you say, is just unbelievable on his. Well, most days he's outstanding for us. So I feel like we've got a lot of threat there on the wings, both Bowen and Somerville, who can support obviously Antonio up front. So yeah, I think like although we're missing Kudus, we've got enough to cause Nottingham Forest problems going forward.
There are similarities between the two sides in the sense like you've got quality in the wings, but quality behind the striker. So have we. But we've got Chris Wood, who's absolutely banging them in. I guess you signed Fulkrug to do that. You've got Antonio, who's kind of the aging warrior workhorse, who we know well from his time at Forest. Has he still got it? Or is he a bit of a is he someone who's more of a 50-minute, 60-minute man and then needs to come off now?
Well, beast mode, Antonio, is, which we like to refer to. It comes a little bit few and far between now, which is a bit unfortunate. Where you used to sometimes get it 2 out of 3 games, that sort of unbelievable form where he was just bossing the game and bullying defenders. Don't get me wrong, he's still capable. He really is. He's on his day, Antonio. Still, he's outstanding, but his age is catching up with him. And like you say, when in terms of the time, he can't do 90 minutes now. But he's still very, very good for us. And again, against Manchester United, he caused them problems. He can make things happen, Antonio. He really can. I don't know what obviously being a former Forest player, and he's obviously got a lot of love for the football club. That's where we signed him from, wasn't it? For Nottingham Forest back in 2015, I think, or 14, around that time. So he's been a long time now. So whether he's got a bit of a former club, wants to go and a bit of a point to prove, I don't know. I doubt it. But I mean, he's still a good player, and on his day he can be a real handful to deal with. But yeah, he won't play the full 90 minutes. We will make changes. Danny Ings will probably come on, I imagine, at some stage in that game, probably for the last 20 minutes, half hour or so.
What about Forest then, from what you've seen of them? Any players that worry you, you think could really hurt West Ham?
I mean, Forest have been great this season. Really good start. From an outsider looking in, it looks like a club that's starting to settle into the Premier League now. I feel like you get promoted, the first season objective, just don't get relegated. Don't get relegated for God's sake. And it is a battle. And I feel like once you've survived even the next probably 2 to 3 seasons, you just want to start moving away from that relegation battle every year and just start to come away from it. And it feels like Nottingham Forest are possibly going through that now, that just stepping away a little bit. I still think the objective for the club is survival. I'm sure that is, when they set out the season objectives, probably number 1 was just don't get relegated. We want to survive. But no, I'm really impressed with Nottingham Forest. You've got some great players. Obviously, you asked me a couple. Morgan Gibbs-White, obviously, just such a talent. I don't think he's going to be available for this game by the looks of it.
I would say not, as we sit here right now.
No, it doesn't. I did see something about him. He was watching a training session or something. I did read that. So it does seem like he's possibly going to be unavailable, but which is a bonus for us. But he's a great player. In fact, he was someone that we did a podcast a little while ago. We're talking about Paqueta replacements, and he would be someone that I would look at if you could pick a sign. And not saying I want West Ham to go and raid Nottingham Forest for him, but I just think he's a real talent. Do you know what I mean? He works really hard, real talented individual. Hudson-Odoi has been a great signing for you. Another player I admire, obviously former Chelsea player, but you've got some real good players. Milenkovic seems to have settled well as well. Are you pleased with him? Because we were quite keen on him at one point.
Massively pleased. And I've spoken to a couple of people. Adam Summerton, who's a TNT Sports commentator who does Serie A, and I remember him in the summer saying he was really surprised that West Ham didn't buy him because he felt like a perfect David Moyes signing a couple of years ago. He's so good in the air. Like statistically, he's like an elite defender in the air. And he's got Murillo alongside him, who's kind of the showman a little bit more. They're a real good pair. So yeah, I when you look at like West Ham defensively, I thought like Milenkovic would have fitted perfectly. So I think we stole a march on you there, thankfully.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Fiorentina you got him from, wasn't it? So
yeah,
because he played against us in that final, and I was impressed with him. He's a lump, and he's a bit old school, tough, and I say very good in the air. I've been impressed with him. I think having players like that as well, defensive line. So for Nottingham Forest just seem like a very settled team at the moment. It's not littered with superstars and anything like that, but it's getting better. It's becoming more of a Premier League side. You feel now that you are adding quality. And Chris Wood, I mean, what a start to the season he's having, and again, one of those sort of unsung heroes a little bit in the Premier League. A very good all-round striker. Reliable and dangerous, and causes us, especially as West Ham, he causes us issues all the time. But because he's not that kind of sexy signing sort of guy, he kind of falls under the radar a little bit. People don't really take him too seriously in a way. Do you know what I mean? But I think that suits you. I think that's what you'd rather. You don't want him grabbing too many headlines. You want to keep it quiet and just keep him settled and doing what he's doing. So I just think Nottingham Forest are looking really good, actually. I think there's a lot to be pleased about. And like we talked about before we started recording, I think there's more. There's a handful of teams now that I think you can quite confidently say you're going to finish above. which is a nice feeling because that gives you that then belief that you haven't got to worry too much about looking over your shoulder. Whereas I don't think you've had that yet until now to this point. You know, I look at this, I look at teams in that league, Southampton, Leicester, and a few others. I think even probably Crystal Palace are struggling. There's a few teams down there at the moment that are struggling. Ipswich, I think, will struggle to survive. And already there's your 3 or 4. And I already think, well, Forest, you won't finish below those teams. So do you know what I mean? I think it gives you the platform now to start looking up a little bit, thinking, well, where can we realistically finish this season? I just think, it's great to see it, and Nottingham Forest be back in the Premier League. It's it was a long time, wasn't it, away? So it's nice to see him back where you belong, really, a big football club. So I've got nothing but good things to say, really. And it's one of those games, especially away, that you just do not look forward to at all as a visiting fan. It's like, oh my god, it's a tough ground to go and play. So if West Ham can get a point out of this, I'll be more than happy.
Just lastly, before I let you go, I'm picking up on one thing you said there I think might be interesting. Teams always double up on Hudson-Odoi. You've got Wan-Bissaka, who always strikes me as a really good one-on-one defender. Maybe they just go one-on-one with him. Do you think that could be a key battle that could decide a little bit of the game or not?
Yeah, possibly so. I've got to say, Wan-Bissaka has been really, really impressive for us. Really good. Like I can't believe we got him for 15 million quid. I don't know how we've managed to do that. Because he is a top defender. The only issue we've had with him, and it's been sort of noted, it keeps reoccurring, which you may exploit, is that he does get forward a lot and he does wander. He wants to get involved. So what we tend to do, we're trying to play a system where we want our wing backs, our defenders, right back and left back, to get forward. And then what we typically tend to do then is have Edson Alvarez or Rodriguez drop and make it a back 3 to cater for it. Now, what we're finding, and this has happened quite a lot, it happened against Tottenham, against Chelsea, it happened against Man United quite a fair bit, is that Alvarez can't cope with the pace of the winger. So Hudson-Odoi could have a bit of a field day there. So I really hope that we're not going to do that. I'd rather us not have him going forward so much and keep an eye on that, because that does happen quite a fair bit. It's going to be a battle. I think one-on-one he'll struggle against Wan-Bissaka, to be honest. He is so good and very difficult to beat. In fact, I think in the Man United game, he was the only player on the pitch that didn't get dribbled past. So he's very hard to get round. I think they call him the Spider because he's just so big and he just gets his legs in. But he's very hard to get past. So yeah, it's going to be a battle, that I'll tell you. But as I say, the only anxiety I've got is him going forward, because it's happened a few times that where we've then lost possession. That left wing is left completely exposed, and then you've got Edson Alvarez trying to run back, and by the way, he can barely run. So yeah, that does give me nightmares a little bit for this game.
Good stuff. Right, if people have enjoyed this, do us a favor, hit like on the video, do subscribe. You can become a channel member and give us a lovely review on iTunes and Spotify. We shall be back tomorrow post-match. We'll be a bit late. I'm going to the game, so I think it's about 7:30 or 8, with former Reds midfielder Lewis McGugan and Chris from Forest all over. So look forward to that. Mark, thank you very much. Really appreciate your time. If people want to follow the West Ham Point of View post-match, where can they find you?
We're on the West Ham Way channel on YouTube. Yeah, on there we've got. I'm also available on social media, things like that. But yeah, that's where I am, and I'll be doing my preview for the game on there as well. So look forward to that. So no, look, I'm always available, and look forward to coming on this channel because it's always a joy, Matt. So thank you for having me on.
Yeah, great to have you with us. Have a good day, everyone. If we don't see you tomorrow at post-match, then hopefully we shall see you soon.